The local people knew exactly when the rain season comes and when the dry season sets in. The farmers knew when to plant and knew the harvest time. They would plan their farming activities well because the climate was definite. The rains were predictable and sufficient to support the crops. There was no need for irrigation. Water was available throughout the year. The forests were thick with a rich biodiversity. People depended on nature for their livelihoods with ease. Life was good. Unfortunately, the cherished climate has since changed. Today we are seeing strange things happening. Prolonged droughts, unpredictable rains, floods submerging villages, lakes and rivers bursting their banks, displacing families, and the proliferation of diseases associated to climate change. But what is climate change and how does it manifest?
Indeed, Ugandans know that we have been, over the last 2-3 years, we have been in a situation where we're having too much water, causing flooding, and also resulting in high water levels. And these high water levels have basically happened in all our major water bodies, starting with Lake Victoria, Lake Albert, and Lake Choga. These are basically our 3 major water bodies.
A lot has been said about climate change. Whereas some people believe that climate change is real, others think it is just propaganda being spread by a section of people who are self-seekers. We visited a number of places in the Albertine region to see if actually climate change is real. We set off from Vision Group headquarters in Kampala and headed to Ntoroko district, located in the western part of Uganda. Our first stop was at the IDP camp in Katunguru village. The main activities here are fishing and cattle rearing. The fish business is very lucrative but done covertly because the government stopped fishing in the area. This camp dwells thousands of people. The communities here have no toilets and the hygiene is terrible. Mounds of human excreta are seen with thousands of blue flies hovering the entire area, jumping from the fecal matter to the drying fish. You can only be lucky if you leave the area without flies entering your mouth or fall into your eyes. Challenges here are many. The main permanent road was washed away by the floods. To access the place, the community constructed a temporary timber bridge that connects the island to the other side. Every user has to pay 2,000 shillings.
Mpinduka yuwira habwa sazenu stiru tchali mukubonabona habukuba amizi akasisa maju ngatwara mataka gakaito bitungwa enkoko nembuzi habukuba na sazenu tuzoroho nenti ikafa nyingi habukuba tukatutaina haturazita.
People's houses were ruined by the floods, leaving them with no choice but to build temporary shelters.
Twarugambe banza hano tuli mataka abantu ntupangisa atono nita abandi tuli mu rugudi tukomboka mu rugudi rwa government rundi rugudi rwa ragaga rushengo ndikurosinga ndugenda hanyanza kandi ali mu abandi tukwemara enzu tushwire mu kusakaza blanket.
Ntoroko district has over 3,000 people living in IDP camps as a result of climate change. These people had decent homes and lived a normal life.
The communities there are homeless. As I'm talking, we have over 3,000 people who are living in camps, internally displaced. So surely there is a lot of social factors in those camps whereby there are no sanitaries, the environmental factors, and even an issue of HIV spread.
In Kanara Town Council camp, the floods spread up to about 12 kilometers into people's homes, displacing 4 villages of Ntoroko North A and B, Chisenyi A and B, all in one parish. As a result, over 1,500 families were displaced.
Some families which have got some people who are thinking deeply are moving away from this place, but people who are here, this is our real home. We have nowhere to go. We are born from here, so you cannot tell me to go and forth and start up a life that is very hard. Let me be here.
Wano kutuka wano twatuka ku mwezi gwa mwenda omwaka ogwo gutwaka kuba amabega kati wano sawa zino tuliko omwaka gumu n'emyezi ngesatu nga tuli wano.
The people, however, have no clear idea of what caused the change in climate and the floods.
Njogere kituufu abantu bange banembeera enkyukakyuka y'obudde tebagimanyi kubanga tewaliwo omuntu wadde omwe yavaayo najja kubasomesa enkyukakyuka y'obudde kati tebagimanyi. Nange kenyini simanyi kiki ekyaleeta ekintu ekyo kubanga amazzi gaali wala nnyo olwaleero gajja ne gakoma wali abaawo ne basenguka enkya n'ogasanga eri abawale ne basenguka gajja bwegati.
We recognize that generally from 2009 October we have received more than normal rainfall. The amount of rainfall has been more than what would ideally, and that's why the prediction by ICPAC and also our Uganda National Meteorological Authority have indicated that we are generally having too much rainfall falling within a short period. And when rainfall falls too much within a short period, falling on highly degraded catchments with limited tree cover, with bare hills, with a lot of wetlands degraded, and so the water doesn't have enough time even to go underground. A lot of it is running on the surface.
The camp has several challenges. The 900 people who stay here have to share 8 makeshift toilets. The toilets are shallow and only serve about 3 months before they get full. Mothers painfully lock up their children in their houses to go and make ends meet through prostitution.
What you're seeing here, people here had their homes, but because of these changes, we are here now in the camp, and it has affected us so much. Some mothers locks a child inside the house, goes out at night to a man to get something for food, for children. And this it has affected us so much.
Children here are confined in one place with all kinds of people. No wonder there are many cases of child pregnancies and sexually transmitted diseases. A number of girls aged between 12 and 14 have children with no responsible fathers.
Here, HIV is on its peak. HIV is on its peak because these old men, people who are infected, are going out with these young girls. And here, every young child you see, every girl of 12 years you see here has a child. There are so many unwanted people. Girls have given birth. Others, just of recent, there's one who died when giving birth. She gave birth to twins and died immediately. So really, it's on its peak.
Many people live like paupers. If they are not given what to eat, they starve. The government normally intervenes, but what they give is not enough. A remedy must be got for the people in Ntoroko generally, especially if we must save the future of young girls, but also empower the helpless people. Mujuni notes that the floods issue is no longer a small matter to be handled by the district alone.
We have been requesting government, because this challenge, it is beyond a local government. This is an issue of cabinet to sit and the gazette 5 miles of the park, and we will set to these people, because these people, they need a permanent solution.
The residents of Bududa district have really tested the effects of climate change. Up to this day, they have never come to terms with what is happening in their area. Their grannies stayed here with no trouble. It would rain and the sun would shine with no loss of life or property as a result. With increased human activity in this mountainous area, everything turned upside down. The rain falls for days, causing the soil to loosen up and slide downwards, causing damage to gardens and homesteads.
We have discovered that there is water down in the soil, which is disturbing us, extending our land from up to down. Share ratio, ingacho kamezi karubula. Ari karubule kamezi kana kamas. Yenyola kawo sawo sabisala, lyo bali abali lyangu lyo la khukhaliha. Sekhumanya khulya bari yakhala khumwa khakolu 18 kimyakha chebere chenga ifashi khusala khuno tawe yabanga ekhala. Ari bali amalambe kimiko shimya binga bibiri. Mubukeyo paka kwa nishelero. Ari ni mubuka ino sasa khulumya khuli safe tawe.
As we traversed the village, we found this old man whose house was half buried by the earth that was washed from the upper part of the mountain. On the fateful day, the rain started at 7 a.m. and continued non-stop till 7 p.m. Peter is risking his life to continue staying in such a house, but has no choice because this is the only place he has. He lives in fear, but hopes that one day the government will relocate them to a safer ground. If we are to go by the claim that climate change is a result of human activity, then Ugandans have a lot to do to reverse its effects. It is claimed that each year, Uganda loses over 90,000 hectares of forest cover. Bugoma Forest is one example of serious deforestation. Philip Chihumuro, an environmentalist, says that forests are the only natural way through which we can address climate change.
Because the trees that grow capture the carbon, and then they are able to make sure that the global warming is stemmed, as opposed to the technological advancements where we have carbon capture and aspects like that. So it's very critical for us to have the forest restored.
Mohindo relocated from Kasese to Changwali and started growing maize. For about 8 years, everything was going on well until recently, when he realized that his yields had dwindled due to prolonged drought. He has now resorted to boda riding to make a living.
Abantu banse turi kubonabona habwe ekibira habwe nshonga ekibira bakirireho enjura kechagwa. So ejine challenge ya mani nkanyo muntu wahansa tashomire habukuba tinyinaho ndaza ntashome omulimo gwanje no kuhinga kunafunire challenge ejo nagamba kangaruke mu boda.
Climate change is happening in the households, actually in the communities. A woman steps out there, goes out to harvest her beans, but she can barely even have enough beans to serve her household. So those are already the effects of climate change.
Women are the most vulnerable who are feeling quickly the adverse effects of climate change, and they are also contributing towards climate change. Through this, they have degraded wetlands because most of the land in Africa is tilted by women. And they are the most land users. So they end up using whatever land is available, either in the forest, in the wetlands, in the swamps, so that they can get something small to fend for their homes, as most of the families in here in Hoima are women-led.
Environment experts tell us that cutting down Bugoma is a very big mistake we are doing.
Yeah, the trees help to modify the environment. The trees naturally, they enhance the surface roughness to slow down wind. Now, without the forest, that means you are like giving chance wind to go through. That is no one case. But now, without the trees, that means the contribution from what we call evapotranspiration will be lost. That's why you find that the forests are influencing areas surrounding in terms of cool climate, but also in terms of becoming really moist most of the times in the year. So with the clearing of Bugoma, it will introduce a change in the local climate over that area. And once more, what would have been the original contribution from evapotranspiration will be lost. For that matter, the rainfall over that particular area is considerably expected to decrease, and at the same time, the local temperatures there expected to slightly shoot up.
If government doesn't come in strong to look at ways of keeping what is remaining intact, I would say that we are moving into a very dangerous time.
This is our home. It feeds us. The Albertine graben, for example, it has great endemism. Endemism means, species that are found only in this landscape. Actually, in Africa, it's the most biodiverse. So we are very lucky. When you talk about here, the species that are here, you have over 60 unique species of, reptiles just resident in the Albertine graben. Almost 60% of the birds in Africa are found here. So the plant diversity is immense. You're going to see many species getting lost, but also the livelihoods, because our livelihoods here are linked to nature specifically. So with climate change, our livelihoods are going to be threatened. I've already talked about food security. If we have climate change coming in heavily, and if it's coming up, you're going to find challenges with food security.
Ekihingwa kiito kitwatwihagamo akasente akaba guryo muceri beitu hati omuceri noreba tigukihingwa habwe eshonga yo kugira ngo enjura tugitunga enjura kurungi.
Unfortunately, the people who would have protected the forest are squabbling.
In fact, also I have my private forest, which I kept for the last 10 years. This is where I was grazing even cattle. But I was pushed out by National Forest Authority. By the time I reclaimed it, then Hoima Sugar came in. Brought in some charcoal burners, timber cutters. In fact, it has been deforested very terribly.
Nanye ndareba kabire zindi ziri kuija kweyiza muri icyo kibira bari kuija bose amakara bashare yembaho nanye nko muntu wahererine icyo kibira nazayo nyuwe bananyibanyirukeho tinyine sente zo kubatugira.
One of my biggest concern, actually it's a worry, is that we see those that are supposed to help us protect our environment, where we have the forest, and those that are helping us much mitigate the issues of climate change because they help in rain formation. We look at them being in the lead of doing depletion. Because when we look at one of our biggest natural forests, that is Bugoma Forest, was given away by the kingdom, an institution that is supposed to protect the resource that we have, but also even to the animals that are staying in the forest, which we see now running out from the forest to the communities, and they are hurting people. And remember, we have chimpanzees in Bugoma. We have so far lost 2. So what happens to the rest? And so I think it's a big concern that has to be looked at if we are talking about climate action and we need to mitigate climate change.
Life in Mohocha IDP camp is not the best. The people dread every single day and curse climate change that caused them to leave their homes. Before coming to the camp, they used to have food any way they wanted. Today, they depend on government and well-wishers for food rations, something that is not sustainable. As always, women and children suffer most.
We have stayed in the IDP camp almost 1 year and around 7 months, if I can count very well.
They formerly have to use a homestead. They are now in a host family. So we have a lot to do also on the psychosocial support to these children. But also as a right as the children, they have the right to grow up in a good environment. But now these children are forced by nature to move to the camps.
Enkuba bwetonya amazzi gano ne gajjula mba sikyasobola kugenda sayidi eri kunoonyayo ebyokulya. Epiki ne zibeera nga tezisobola kuyitawo, motoka ne zibeera nga tezisobola kuyitawo. Kati bye bizibu bye tufuna ebyo.
If you are still doubting that climate change is real, then you need to visit Mount Rwenzori. You will be surprised to find the snow that used to cap the peak has receded over 12.5 kilometers.
Climate change is real. We have seen a lot of changes. This is one of the most beautiful places, and one of the things which make it peculiar is the glacier, which is up there. Because of the changing in temperatures, the glacier has over the years reduced. Like 100 years ago, it was 15. We had 15 square kilometers of glacier on top of all the peaks. Now we have basically about 1.5 square kilometers left. So it's a sign that climate change is real. But most importantly is that Rwenzori National Park is one of the only places which is conserved. And then outside the park, we have seen people cutting trees. Almost the land outside the park is bare. We are seeing this as a big challenge.
The beauty that we used to see on the mountain has disappeared. Previously, they would go to the mountain and you enjoy the breeze of that snow cappement. But I want to tell you that you reach the Rwenzori, the snow cappement is just receding every other time. We need to act as the communities around the mountain because this is our glory. Fortunately, Rwenzori Mountain is a World Heritage Site. So what will the world demand of us when it is lost at our hands?
Yeah, these days, because of the different towns coming up due to massive development, we have seen now us being hit by heat waves. Indeed, with the increasing temperatures, the glaciers the snow cover is decreasing and the cover is warming up. Originally, they didn't have things of mosquitoes, malaria, but now it is there because now the temperatures are entering the breeding phase, so mosquitoes can breed there.
Government, civil society, including the communities, have seen the negative impacts of poor environmental management, and they are coming into for conservation. We are seeing people planting now trees. Even the river banks, we are seeing people are planting now bamboo. We are seeing there is a good urge and stamina for people to really restore this thing because they have seen the impact of poor environmental management.